Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Party Pace Podcast. Yo soy Russ y este es mi amigo Nolan, otherwise
Hola.
known as the Bike Sauce, or en español, el Bici Salsa. Right.
Wasn't expecting to go bilingual on this one.
I gotta try.
Yeah, sure.
So today the topic is budget bikes. What's too budget? What should you look for in a budget bike so you don't get, you know, screwed, I guess. And yeah, but before we get to that, we got to do some catching up. This is our first transatlantic live stream, and hopefully it's going okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, you tell me. You guys have been keeping track of your behind the scenes videos on Patreon. It's seems like quite an ordeal just to open a bank account,
It is. It's like the worst RPG ever. Like everything is, you kind of are still guessing at you saw the last update video where, we had to get this document approved, and you have, the first person told us to do it this machine and couldn't quite understand what's going on. It was at that point we were just putting in random numbers and random queries, and it's like, try again, try again. And that's been a lot of our experience in Spain so far in terms of the bureaucracy, but other stuff is good.
That's pretty much Laura doing most of the communication.
Yeah, she definitely has a better handle on the language. So in those moments, I'm pretty useless.
Just standing around smiling.
Yeah, I just go, sí, yo también, or something.
Right.
But
you got your temporary spot, and you have potentially the visas in process, I guess. So
yeah, we're in a vacation rental. We had to make a road trip or a train trip to Barcelona the other day and start to kit the studio. One thing we've learned is, in a lot of Spanish cities, they're pretty old and everything's very built up. So light's at a premium. It's hard to find if you could, the prime spot is an apartment on the outside of the building facing a park, so there's no development right next door. Otherwise, most of the time, there's there's windows and someone else living there about 30 feet away, and it just blocks the sunlight.
Yeah.
So just have to augment the lighting to make it work.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I saw you picked up one of those cob lights and a lantern thing.
Yeah, that was quite an adventure, trying to describe what I needed at the store. Yeah, I was like, necesito un luz y tripod de luz.
I got that.
Yeah. But the guy was really good. Again, he actually, when we first started talking, he was like, English or, I was like, no, well, let's do it in Spanish. Yo quiero practicar. So he was kind enough to kind of humor my terrible Spanish.
Do you find that are there people who speak English there, or is pretty much everybody Spanish? And
it depends. It depends on in Barcelona, a lot of people speak English, and a lot of people speak Spanish and Catalan. In Girona, the older folks, some of them only speak Catalan. A lot of the businesses, they speak English, Catalan, and Spanish, just because it's kind of a little touristy place. But if most of the places we go into, they'll see me stumbling and they'll start to speak English. I'm like, no, let's.
Yeah.
As long as there isn't a line behind me, I'll try to kind of push on. It's gotta learn, right? So.
Right. Yeah. You have to excuse my ignorance, but I know Catalan is a different language, but how related is it to Spanish?
It's definitely a distinct language. It's not a dialect. Okay. I was under the false impression it was dialect, but it's pretty much its own language. It shares some words.
Okay.
If you look at the language tree, it falls under Vulgar, Latin, Western Romance, and within its branches, it shares with Portuguese, Spanish, and Catalan, and then French and Italian are are close cousins.
Okay. So is your goal to learn both like independently?
Yeah, my goal is to get to like a B1 level proficiency in Spanish, because that's kind of the lingua franca of the country, but to also, get a grasp on Catalan, because that's, in terms of like daily life, that's kind of what a lot of the people speak, default to here. So,
right.
Yeah.
Man, big challenge. Well, you got Laura to help you out a lot, though.
Yeah. Yeah, well, both of us are starting from scratch with Catalan, but she definitely has she's a little bit more advanced with her Spanish.
Oh, that's good.
So
cool.
Yeah.
So how's it day to day? How's it been?
Good. Just last month, like our routine was completely destroyed just because of all the travel.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to get back into the swing of things, start up the video factory.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what I'm going to make videos about.
Right.
Like one of the challenges, like I'm realizing very quickly, is one of the advantages of having the YouTube channel in the States is like very easy to get product to review, but here it's very difficult. Like shipping is exorbitant, and then you have to pay VAT on whatever you import in, even if you already own it. So I have like a couple grand of camera equipment I was going to have my brother ship to me. I'd have to pay 20% of its value when it comes in, even though I already purchased it. So it's so you should come visit, and you can stay here if you carry back some stuff.
Yeah, carry back 16
a couple bikes and yeah.
Nice. Now
what about video? Good.
Yeah, video content wise, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the landscape there is the thing to focus on for a little bit, at least, right?
Yeah, I'd love to do more like travel-y style videos. People say that they'll watch them, but they don't actually watch them.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, that's why I've actually done fewer ride videos, because it's such a small percentage of the overall audience wants to act like physically watches them.
Right.
So I'm trying to get creative. Yeah, like my last video was, it's holiday season. I was like, we need to do a video to kind of push the caps. But, instead of just doing like, 7 reasons you should buy a cap, maybe I can do like a quasi video essay.
Yeah,
and it was kind of cool. Like I, looked into the history of the cycling cap, what people, first wore, and then, when it was peak, and then at what point did pros, you stop seeing pros wearing them as often. Right. So I thought I did a pretty good job at kind of packaging, what was the call to action to buy stuff, but I gave value up front.
I think so. I agree. I mean, in the back of my head, I knew what was coming, but it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch. I was
like, I'm gonna front load the video with value. We're gonna talk about Nelson Vales. We're gonna talk about the first winner of the Tour de France. Get some nerdy UCI stuff, and then I'll ask which.
Right. No, it was good. I liked it. It's short, quick. It felt like a quick one.
Yeah, I've been watching are you a fan of like those video essays, that format on YouTube?
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of any one creator that I follow that does those, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of ones on philosophy, and I just like the entertaining summary of things. And I don't have a super deep knowledge of too many things. I mean, I could do a video essay on friction shifting, but I'd love to incorporate more of that. It just takes time, because you got to research and write the script and find the the B-roll and the coverage and everything. So
yeah, right. Cool. Yeah. So you gotta get creative, I guess. Well, which is kind of the job, I suppose.
Yeah, it's definitely. I can't quite phone home the videos like I used to in the States. Like realizing what I have access to. I have access to different things, fewer products, but more interesting people and places. So how do I, shift a channel that does a lot of gear reviews, to be frank, but to other types of content, and still keep the audience and keep it entertaining.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like you won't. In your head, it's probably like this dire situation, but I feel like most of your audience will follow along for whatever you do. Um, I mean, the
Yeah.
shops there, like the shop visits, those are cool. So like, seems like those you can stack up a bunch of those maybe.
Yeah. It's funny, right when we came back from Barcelona, people like pinged me on the gram. It's like, oh, you missed this shop, is right around the corner.
Oh, okay.
Um, so there's a couple more that I think fit our niche that we'll go back and visit. And then I know
Okay.
there's a interesting shop in Madrid that does like 90s style mountain bike resto mods.
Oh, awesome.
There's some bike packing specific shops in like the northern part of Spain. So that might save that for a spring trip.
There you
So
go. Yeah. So would you say
yeah,
like in Girona specifically, it's like highly roady? That was kind of your
yeah,
first impression, right? It's like highly roady culture, but it sounds like outside of there, maybe there's stuff that's more your speed.
yeah. In the cities, there's definitely a greater, at least like some other alt cyclists, but in Girona specifically, this is like the road capital of cycling in the world. It seems.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Like I met someone at a cafe the other day. He'd overheard me talking with someone I just met about like fishing because I was asking what the fishing situation was. He was like, "Oh, I fish. You know, you can get brown trout here, blah blah blah." And then he left, and then he was like, "Oh, do you know who that was?" I was like, "No, who was that?" And then he told me, and I looked it up. Oh, it's this ex like world tour rider.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. So,
So
so I'm trying to
how
think of
no, I was
like
gonna ask, go ahead.
I was trying to come up with a format, like since there are so many pros here, what's a video format I can do with them that would fit the channel?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I was going to do one where I just ask them really like dumb questions and see how
Tire
they
width, tire
respond.
pressure.
Or like what exactly is a pro cyclist?
Oh, okay.
What defines a pro cyclist?
Right.
Is it, do you have to be at a certain level? Is it that you make money riding your bike or your full income? But like, what is that? Things like that. So
Yeah.
kind of existential, probing but dumb questions.
Show them the Uno shifter like out of context and ask if they know what it is.
Yeah.
That
You
that
want to know
actually
a
that
funny story?
yeah.
You want to know a funny story though? Is we ran into Taylor Finney like the first week we got in here, and he had a bike with alt bars and stuff like that. And we got to talking. It's like, oh yeah, I did this project with Soma. We're working on these kind of alt bar things, and he's like, are you the guy that did that shifter that works with 12 and 13 speed? I was like, yeah. He's like, I just ordered one of those.
Oh, nice. Oh, see? Your reach
Yeah, so
is
completely unrelated. He was like, I just watched that video like last week or something.
oh, see? Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, how often are you getting recognized over there?
um, like like the semi frequently,
Oh,
from
okay.
usually from people like out of town visiting on tour.
Oh,
Like we've met some tourists coming through. And they're like, hey. Um, but yeah, it's a weird place. Like most of the people are like, who the hell are these weirdos?
yeah. Well, and I don't know if this is true, like, especially in, like, Southern California, like, you see a guy walking around with a camera, talking to a camera, you don't think twice, right? I
Right.
wonder how it is out there. Is that, like, weird out
It's
there? Are
weird.
they
I'm still like, in the States, I can do, point the camera and talk all day, but here I still feel like, I don't know if it's me thinking that's frowned upon or it just draws too much attention, but I've actually not done too much
Hmm,
public vlogging yet. So
okay.
we'll see. Next week.
Part of it's getting used to your new surroundings probably, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some difference in culture in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. How are
What's
things with you?
oh, with me, I don't know, fine, normal. I mean, you were talking about your schedule being disrupted for, from a month worth of traveling.
Hmm.
And yeah, I totally get. I mean, we just went to we just went to San Diego for a couple days for Thanksgiving, and we're still recovering like a week later. I mean, like, I can only
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same, my semester's about to start wrapping up. This was a particularly busy one for me. So, I mean, the videos, I feel like each week I was kind of barely hanging on to my schedule, but I'll have a little bit of a break. So maybe be able to focus on the quality a little bit more over the coming weeks.
Right.
But yeah, pretty much same over here. Yeah.
Yep.
I had been riding, so I got this, the state bike was sent over, oh man, at least I want to say 2 or 3 months ago. And I only just had time to start riding it over the past couple of weeks. That's kind of what led me, that's kind of what made me suggest this topic today is this bike. So we can talk about that in just a bit. But yeah, pretty much smooth over here otherwise.
Cool. All right. Well, before we get into our topic of budget bikes and talking about the state bike and everything, let's you'd mentioned nerding out a little bit on bike YouTuber Gear Talk because you
right.
interview or you reviewed an interesting camera recently, and I picked up one of these guys. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, is that the Pocket 3 or the Osmo?
Yeah, I bought this literally 2 days before we were going to board the plane, just because I knew this would be super expensive and impossible to get.
Oh, that's the one that like flips out and follows you around on a little gimbal.
Yeah, it does that. Does cool. The magic.
Yeah, I saw Potato Jet's video on that. It looks really, really cool. Yeah, but that's like, it's a totally different type of camera than the Action 4, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't feel comfortable using this on a bike. I know that Mike from Locked In was a big fan of the previous generation, but I think he wrecked it because he crashed while he was using it. But the coolest thing about this isn't even the gimbal; it's the mic, which is apparently turned on. But it's their new version of their lavalier mic, and it speaks directly to the camera. And this is where I think action cameras are going to go soon, hopefully. Because you imagine like riding your bike, having this like clipped on, and then you turn on your, if the next Insta360, next DJI Action, 5 or something, or even GoPro, and you've got that great footage and good audio, which is usually the bane of action cameras.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. With the X3, I've been plugging in the little like dongle for the Rode mic. So then it's the camera, and then you have the little receiver off to the side of it on a bracket. So the thing ends up being like pretty big. And then you clip the receiver, the transmitter part to your whatever. So it would be cool if it's all integrated. That'd be really cool. Actually, I'm gonna grab the thing.
Yeah. So hey there, everybody in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. We had to change the time up because if you guys missed it, Laura and I have moved to Spain, and right now it's about 7:15 in the evening. So we're gonna attempt to do these mid-morning US time.
Yeah, everyone's on their second coffee break at work right now. Slacking off at work. Anyways, I mean, I thought it might be an interesting conversation because this camera just came out. This is Insta360's newest thing, which looks like almost identical to a GoPro.
Right.
But the cool thing is, like, I feel like it's called the Ace Pro. I feel like this is more designed for not just action, but also vlogging, because the screen pops up. And so you get this full touch screen on the front. So it's, really easy to frame up a shot. It's waterproof right out of the box. It does up to 8K. I think it's the first 8K camera. Not that I'll ever use that, but I don't know. They're just like, I feel like Insta360 is one of these companies that they just iterate really fast. So they try something. If it works, they totally double down. If it doesn't work, they drop it and move on. But you know, the GoPro has really not changed in its form factor really since like the first iteration. So I don't know. Yeah. Do you have any experience with the Insta360 cameras?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the X3, which is the 360, 361. Their action cameras, the previous one I wasn't, yeah, that one's awesome.
Yeah.
Their action cams are a little rough. Like the previous version was pretty good. The one before that, to get stabilization, you have to run it through their software. The one prior to the Ace, you know, does it in body, so it's a little bit better. But I felt like the field of view was fairly tight for writing and vlogging. How is it on the Ace?
It's still a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
I mean, like I did only a couple of side by sides, but you can tell it's even there's like a new action setting on here now, so it's a little wider. But I feel like the GoPro is still just a touch wider. Yeah, so I mean, I think they have a little ways to go, but I feel like, you know, it's not going to be a couple of years before you see those updates. I feel like, you know, Insta3s, there's, I don't know, they're small enough where they're still pretty nimble. Right? They can take some feedback and like actually incorporate that in the next iteration. Yeah,
I've always thought that like the next frontier for action cameras or cameras in general is just audio integration, to have like a built-in, you know, receiver. So let's say, you know, if like, you know, Sony paired up with Rode, and each, you know, new Sony camera already has a Rode receiver in there, so you can use whatever wired or wireless system you have. Same thing with GoPro or, you know, the Insta360 stuff.
Yeah, that would be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah, it seems like the natural thing to happen. I mean, you can only go so far with like resolution, right?
Especially for a tiny camera, because otherwise, you know, like I don't think there's going to be a point of diminishing returns where you kind of lose, you know, good video quality or low light capability because you're jamming too many megapixels in there.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, the problem is like I like doing the tech like kind of reviews and like the camera stuff, but man, those videos just tank. Like nobody cares what I record with.
I'm the same. It's like I've done a couple like camera reviews. I've really had to like finesse the title and thumbnail so they'll get a click. Like, I think the last camera review I did, I was like, can you tell what's different? And it's so super vague. It's like, did something change on the bike? It's like, no, the camera I used is different.
Yeah, it almost feels a little slimy. But I mean, like, I didn't try and hide it. So the problem is like, it's like, I think the thumbnail is so different from my typical thumbnails, like literally just two cameras next to each other with me like grabbing, you know, I'm trying to show that I'm preferring this one. And I don't know, I just think the average viewer doesn't really necessarily care. And then the people who do watch are probably coming to my video from like one of the big tech channels. And so most of the comments are, hey, this is just an advertisement. Good job. You know, good job being a giant ad.
Yeah.
So what can you do? Yeah.
It's a dream. Living the dream.
So once in a while I'll do, you know, because I'm excited about what's coming out. So I'll do the video, then usually remember instantly, oh, that's right. That's why. So I don't like doing these videos.
Yeah. I try to be pretty selective, just because it does, they always tank relative to other videos, you know. Such a small percentage of the audience of bike audience is like really into that. So
yeah. I feel like mountain bikers maybe are more interested than curly bar riders.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw like I don't know if you watch BKXC.
Yeah.
He does. Yeah, he did like a steal my GoPro setup, and relative to his other videos, that even that tanked, and he's got like a big channel. So.
Oh really? Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, people still watched it, but it wasn't looking at his bike specific videos. It just didn't perform as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, now I know.
Yeah. So speaking of which, we should probably talk about bikes.
Oh yeah, sure. That'd be a good idea.
All right. So how budget is too budget? I I feel like every time I don't know about you, Nolan, but whenever I do a video and I have the word budget in the title or kind of frame it as a budget bike, I always have to do like a lot of disclaimers. Like, yes, budget is relative. What's budget to one person is very expensive to another. None of these bikes are free. They're probably going to cost more than what you find out of a dumpster or get at a Goodwill for $20. What other disclaimers do I usually put out there?
I feel
But do you know what I mean? It's such a triggering and relative thing for people.
I don't know if I experienced the same thing. I mean,
Really?
maybe it's just a different viewer base or something. Yeah, I feel like I don't necessarily experience that too much. Um, I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, there's
Well, you're
always
lucky.
well, there's always a handful of comments are like, "Well, I'm just perfectly fine on my 1993 3x7." You know, that one's pretty typical, which I totally get. Yeah, I mean, that bike is probably fine. But you're
Mhm.
right. Like there is some level of you have to frame the video in such a way that in today's world, like with the available bikes you can buy right now, this is on the cheaper end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. Given, inflation, and if we look at the spectrum of what bikes could cost, because some of them are like $18,000.
Yeah.
Yes, this, 1,500 bike is not free. It costs more than $100, but it's budget relative in the spectrum.
Yeah. So right. So yeah, I mean, like I just kind of the title kind of just was stuck in my head for a while, like how budget is too budget. So I thought
Yeah.
the state would be a good jumping off point for that. And then maybe,
Mhm.
you have a lot of experience with the budget brands. I've ridden State and Poseidon. They do good stuff. What else have I ridden? Some of the Polygon stuff I guess you could say is semi-budget. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to start the discussion because the question is how budget is too budget, but that's very
Right.
open.
Well, what
Uh,
would you consider? Okay, I feel like we have to put some guardrails on this. What's what's a budget bike in 2020, late 2023, that comes from a brand in the bike industry and isn't purchased at a department store or a thrift store?
right. Yeah. Well, I think you said it right.
It-
It's a bike that comes from like a legitimate bike manufacturer, not like it's not like a Walmart brand or a Target brand.
Right. Like, where do you
Um,
think what's the floor and ceiling for you, number or price wise, for a budget bike?
the ceiling, I feel like there's no ceiling necessarily. Like once you start getting to 15, like anything above 12,000 to me is just like it's all the same. Like that's just up in the
Mhm.
stratosphere. Um, the floor is a little bit harder to define. So there are budget bikes for $500-600, but I think there's a big jump when you go from a $500 or $600 bike to like a $1,200 or $1,300 bike. Like a big difference, something that you can't like you wouldn't be able to upgrade even like a $500 or $600 bike to get to that levels. So I okay if I had to put a number on it, I'd say maybe $1,000 is your bottom, your bare minimum for budget bike. And I don't know if that sounds crazy to you, but
Um, in late 2023, a couple years ago, I feel like there were a couple of bikes that could have been had, around that like $800-900 mark that were still
Mhm,
pretty good. But now, like, even those bikes are at least 1,000, if not more, in today's market. I
mhm,
think the least expensive bike I tested that came from a bike brand that wasn't a department store cost about $600, and it was not great. Like, to be honest, like there were some QC issues, like most, it was heavy. It was heavy. It was, kind of to be expected, but mostly like the rear dropouts weren't parallel. So like it was a real bear to get the wheel in, and it was just kind of janky setting it up. And it was certainly rideable, but it wasn't, my favorite riding experience.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got, I think we have some common experiences. Like we've both ridden the state all road, right? You've ridden the state all road, and you've ridden some of certainly you've ridden the Redwood, but have you ridden the newer Ambition version of the X, or have you ridden the
I've
X?
not.
Okay.
Just the Redwood.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, so when I see the state 6061 all road, like, to me, that's like kind of like the budget. Like, that's sort of like the picture of a budget gravel bike for me, is when I see that bike. And when you compare that to something, and this is a slippery slope, but if you compare that to something just a few hundred more, I think there's a pretty big jump. And so to me, that's kind of like, so I'm going off on a tangent, but like for wheels, I always feel like there's some point of diminishing return. Like you could go kind of, anything's better than stock, but you go like mid-range alloy, pretty good. You go maybe mid-range carbon, like really good. And then high-end carbon, you kind of taper off in value. I feel like there's kind of a reverse kind of metric for bikes. Like, 2,500, 2,000 level, you're getting like a really solid bike, hydraulic disc brakes, solid group set. And then you dip below 1,500, 1,300. I feel like there's a big gap that happens somewhere around there. And so to me, this state is kind of teetering that line where maybe they could have done a couple of other things to really boost the quality for not that much more money. What was your experience on this state? I mean, that for you, that was a while ago, right?
Yeah, it was a while ago, and I rode the steel version. And I forget what it cost, but I don't think it was more than 1,500. And it was good. I'm trying to remember. I feel like it had a similar combination to the one you rode, where it had like a long rear end and kind of a roadish front end. So in some ways it felt a little unbalanced, but it was fine. I mean, that's how like my Sam Hilborn is.
Oh, is it?
So it's just Rivendell geometry. But it's mostly like the wheels felt heavy. It was a chunky bike. And I feel like given its weight, it was a little under geared for it. But I didn't have any problems with the shifting. I forget what was on there. It wasn't Shimano or SRAM. It was might have been Sensor or something. But it's okay. It's kind of what I'd expect for around that price point. Although I will say I've ridden bikes that are more fun for that price point. And the one that comes to mind really is the Nicasio Plus by Marin.
Right.
Have you had a chance to ride that?
No.
For any Marin bikes?
Nope. No.
I feel like of the brands I've tried from historical bike brands, they do budget really well. Like the Marin was fun because it was, for the price at the time, it was like under $1,000. You got 650B by 48s. You had a Microshift X drivetrain, and it had a pretty fun geometry. It was similar to the Midnight Special, where it was shorter in the rear. I think it was like 425 or something, and so it was like a short, nimble, fun bike, but with big balloon tires for under $1,000 at the time.
That's pretty good.
And I thought it was
nice. That's kind of how I feel about the Poseidon's new X Ambition. Like for me, the X was a little bit too like crossy, I guess. But the Ambition is like much more relaxed, but still pretty nimble. I can't remember the chainstays, but it's definitely less than 430, like maybe 425 or something like that. And that bike like felt really good just right out of the box. And that one actually you can get for less than $1,000. The only thing is like you're getting mechanical disc brakes. And I think there's like a big jump that happens when you go from mechanical to hydraulic. For me anyways, like fortunately the Ambition X, whatever Tektro brakes they're using, they're decent, especially if you like, swap over the housing to compressionless. And the geometry is good on that bike. But you also, then again, there's like, you've always got to, you don't get through axle on that bike. So there's always some kind of compromise. And so for the budget brands, I think I mean, like credit to most of the brands who are trying to do something budget, because it's really hard to put together a solid budget bike, right? Like anybody could spec a high-end bike, right? But the challenge is to do something decent for low amount of dollars. And so I think Poseidon, like for whatever reason, I guess quick release is cheaper to manufacture than through axle. Which
I'm curious, like why?
I don't know. Maybe it's just tooling, like existing tooling is already there or something. But yeah, like technically, if you did want to get the X Ambition with the like cable actuated hydraulic brake upgrade and a through axle upgrade, well, then you're right about the $1,400 or $1,500 mark, anyways. So yeah, I mean, there's always these balances and sort of compromises, but I think that's a pretty decent budget bike. The State, on the other hand, like, well, I was watching before Cycling Tips went kind of defunct. Dave Rome and James Huang and forgot her name, another presenter. They kind of did a long form video on this bike, the State All-Road. And I felt like it was pretty harsh. Like they kind of ripped that thing apart. So like, I mean, I wanted to be fair. So when I was writing it, I had their review in mind, but I also know that a lot of people like this bike. So I was trying to find maybe
I know like the things that they complained about were mostly the components. Like they said the shifting was a little bit off, that the brakes were terrible to the point of dangerous, and that there was a hole in the wheel. Has any of that changed in from their review to the bike you have?
Yes. Yeah. So no holes in the side of the rim. that was a plus. The State components are rebranded Sensa, I'm pretty sure. But this one has a clutched rear derailleur. It doesn't say clutch. There's some like strange name on it, but yeah, it's basically a clutched derailleur. And they did upgrade the brake, so it goes to this State in-house sort of cable actuated hydraulic brake. Also not fantastic when I was writing it. So that, yeah, I mean, like I think there's a little more power, just outright power, but there's virtually no modulation. Like it takes so much hand strength just to pull the lever in. Like by the time you're biting the rotor, like I've got no strength left to modulate the brake. So
that's interesting. I'm beginning to wonder if it's not a function of like the lever, and not the brakes, because it seems weird to have like completely different brake and still have the same issue.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what to make of it. Like I haven't taken the thing apart and seen where the tension is. But actually I had this idea. I've got, like a scale that you weigh bike components. So if you turn that 90 degrees and you tear it, like you zero it out, I was going to like 3D print like a
force meter.
Yeah. I was going to 3D print a little finger and like push all my brake levers to see which one has the lightest or heaviest action. And I know that this one is going to be like orders of magnitude harder to press in. But yeah, I mean, like aside from my forearms burning like the whole ride, it was a decent ride. Like the geometry is something you can't really mess with, and so it did feel a little bit mismatched on this particular bike. But it's okay. Like if it's me, I hope we're allowed to speak openly. I mean, like if it's me, I'll probably get the X Ambition and then just upgrade that a little bit. And at the end of the day, it'll be about the same price point as the State. But I think it's a bike, the X is just a bike that feels a little bit more natural.
What does the Poseidon come in as a complete?
I want to say it's 900.
Okay. Yeah.
At least maybe that was like a sale, Black Friday sale or something, but like it can be had for under 1,000. And then, through axle upgrade is a couple $100, 250 or something like that. And then you've got a through axle bike for a little more than 1,000. And then
Does
you
it
can
have
choose.
a carbon fork as well, or
It
is it
does.
a alloy fork?
It's
Okay.
a carbon fork on either version is carbon fork. And if you get the through axle version, they just give you a fork, a carbon through axle fork, and you just cut it down. But yeah, I mean, I didn't mean for this to be a Poseidon versus State like discussion, but like for me, those are like two kind of competing bikes in my opinion. And so
yeah, and that's, I mean, those are, when they reviewed more budget bikes, those were the brands people kept asking about. So it makes sense. So it seems as if, in order for these bikes to be budget, there's compromises that have to be made. But mostly in the components. I mean, like the geometries in of themselves aren't, there's no like budget geometry.
Right.
Yeah. It's all happening in the components. So it's in some ways, a shame, but those things can be swapped out and made better to an extent.
Right. I will say that the State, like the crank and bottom bracket, that's all like external bottom bracket, like Holotech 2 style. So that's kind of nice. I feel like a lot of budget bikes will come with square taper, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to upgrade later, you've got to deal with the bottom bracket. So,
let's say you're going to spec out you put on a budget bike company contacts you and says, okay, spec out this bike. We have to hit this price point. Where are you going to make those compromises to get a decent, riding bike?
Yeah, I mean, naively, I'm going to put brakes at the top of the list, like hydraulic brakes. Like if it's at all possible to do a budget bike with full hydraulic disc brakes, like that's to me kind of the mark. Because I mean, if you get too budget, like this State could potentially be someone's like first gravel bike, right? But like budget, like I'm trying to be careful not to mix that up with like entry level, but they kind of go hand in hand, right? So if this is your first gravel bike, I mean, I just don't see having a great time on it. Like if you have to squeeze that hard just to stop the bike, and like right away, this bike completely, I felt limited by the bike. Whereas normally, my skill set is usually the limiting factor. But in this case, I really like if there's a rocky descent coming up, I have to think about, okay, well, I got to scrub off a lot of this speed. Otherwise, I'm just going to like die going down this thing. And so if it's somebody's first bike, I feel like getting that confidence really, like a lot of it comes from the brakes. So I would prioritize.
I think that's a challenge though for curly bar bikes.
Absolutely.
Right? Because there's not, too many reliable, hydraulic disc brake shifters or brifters.
Yeah.
That they'll get the price point down. It's more achievable to have hydraulics on a budget bike with flat bars, mountain bikes, or alt bar bikes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I totally get that. So, I mean, I like the idea of the cable actuated hydraulic disc brakes. But at least in my experience, like just the fact that you've got a cable actuated hydro doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better bike. Like the brakes aren't necessarily going to be better. So there's still some gray area there.
Have you tried the Win R1 or the Yokozuna cable actuated hydraulic brakes? Because those are, I found those are pretty good, and I'm going to assume that they probably rebranded those, and
these
my experience they've been decent, or unless do they look different?
These ones look different. Like they Win is that the June Tex? I was just pronouncing them wrong. Yeah, the June Tex or the Win Tex. I like those actually. Those feel pretty good once they were bedded in. I tried those ones on the Poseidon, actually, the Norton, their mountain bike.
Okay.
I haven't tried the Yokozunas, but yeah. I mean, another thing too is like I was talking with Lewis over at Poseidon, and I mean, they're aware that the brakes are always a struggle on budget bikes, so they were thinking potentially. Don't quote me on that, but like the difference between going to a nice like housing, like a compressionless housing, is really big. So you can get mechanical disc brakes to feel really good just by upgrading the housing. So maybe that's the route I would go. Like if I had to spec out a budget gravel bike, I'd sacrifice a couple things to just get that higher quality housing in there. Can make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that makes me really sad about budget bikes with mechanical disc brakes. They tend not to be spec'd or set up with very good mechanical disc brakes, and that's where this impression that all mechanical disc brakes are terrible comes from. Yeah. But if you get decent ones and use nice housing, then they're actually really good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's just that's why they get a bad rap. But yeah, there's no way you're going to see Paul clampers or the Grotax on a sub, $1,500 bike complete.
Yeah, well, it's going to be 20% of the total cost on just the brake. I think what was I going to say? Microshift. I'm hoping to start seeing the sword group set on a lot of budget bikes moving forward, because that was a solid group set, and mechanical disc brakes, but the lever design is so good that the braking feels pretty good.
Yeah. I've managed to line up a couple of bikes to review, and one of them is going to be from the brand Polygon. And they've got this bike called the Aristo Outback. So it's their kind of bike packing bike. And I think they're going to ship one over, or they're going to ship one to a bike shop in Barcelona. And it's going to have the Q's group set. So that'd be interesting. I've not tried the Q's group set bike yet.
Really? Okay. So I thought you had done some kind of review on them. You just talked about them.
I talked about them. Shimano never sends me stuff. So I do what like Casey from Camera Conspiracies does. It's like, they're not sending me stuff, so I'm going to watch all the reviews and then review the product from the review videos I've watched.
Sure. There's value there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be cool. Is that what? Yeah. Where are they from? That brand?
I think they're a Finnish brand, Polygon. I've seen some of their stuff get imported into the States, but not their bikes. But here, I went to Espy BC in Barcelona. They had a Surly, and the Surleys were like all pretty much over $2,000. I think primarily because of the shipping and that. But Polygon was where Surly would be in the States. So it's kind of the Surly-ish vibe for the EU. Seems like.
That's cool. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's see. Got 180 people in the chat.
Yeah, a lot of love for mechanical disc brakes in the chat. So
yeah, if you're in the if you're in the chat, let us know where you're watching from and what is your favorite budget bike at the moment. I'd be curious. That's in production that people can buy new, not like that mint condition Gary Fisher that you found at the yard sale for $10. That does not count.
I saw earlier somebody had Max put up Nicasio Plus right when you said it.
Yes. So Nick here, fan of the Poseidon Redwood. Yeah, I think the Redwood was a fun bike.
I like the Redwood. The Redwood is a beast. It's
came with fat meats.
It's more, it's leaning towards mountain bike end of the spectrum, which is cool. I liked it.
Yeah. So Trevor Johnson here, a big fan of the Kona Rove. Yeah, Kona also has a bunch of bikes that would fall in that budget category. Lots of good value, especially the Rove range. What else? Yeah, Max here said Nicasio Plus. Yeah, I think a lot of people sleep on Marin, but when you go through their catalog, they've got some pretty interesting bikes, like the Gestalt,
Yeah.
same price as the All Road, aluminum, Shimano group set. So it can be done.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's part of it too. Like again, when I think of a budget bike, I'm kind of equating that to entry level, but that's not necessarily the case, right? So if you buy a bike and you kind of know what to look for, you buy a bike for the frame with maybe a couple of upgrades in mind, and then you've got yourself a pretty solid bike after you do those upgrades. Um, Whereas somebody who's just like never touched a gravel bike before, may have a harder time looking for, which specific things like are easier or more challenging to upgrade. So,
Yeah. You know what's a really fun bike that doesn't cost a lot of money that I reviewed last year is a Hudski.
yeah, Hudski, that's right. The
Not
Bay
a
Area
curly
guy.
bar bike, but yeah, but for the money, and I feel like they were doing some killer sales not too long ago for completes, like $1,200, $1,100.
Hmm.
Really interesting geometry and a slack front end. I think like 60, is it 666 or 67 degrees, and like a tucked or 430 rear end.
Yeah.
So really kind of goofy, playful bike for
Right.
not a whole lot of money.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing them at Sea Otter, and it just stands out because it's kind of like what a lot of people were already doing with like kind of modding older bikes to put flat or alt bars on it, but packaged
Yeah.
up in a nice new, form factor. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting bike.
Yeah. I would, if we could buy those in Europe, I would totally get a pair. They were really fun. And like for the price point, like they were spec'd really well. Like there wasn't I couldn't think of anything that I'd want to change except for maybe the handlebar to finesse the sweep back. But other than that,
Mhm.
it had a dropper, hydraulic disc brakes, tires were fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah, you're getting some suggestions for bike brands in the UK and in Europe. It looks
yeah.
like.
So
Yeah,
I've not had a chance to test any of the Polygon bikes, but you have.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on them?
I think there's a ton of great value. Like Polygon's a brand that they own their own factory and they're actually a huge company. But
Oh,
um,
really?
yeah, I kind of wasn't made aware of that until recently. Brian Lee in the chat just now, like he bought an Xstrata, which is like a kind of like their entry level cross country bike, but he converted that. He put he put those crazy bars or corner bars. So it's like a
Mm-hmm.
pseudo drop bar with like mountain controls. The thing's wild, but he rides that everywhere. Like he'll take that on mountain bike rides or gravel rides and crushes it either way.
Yeah.
I like all their Polygon's mountain stuff is super good value for the money. Their gravel stuff is a little bit slow to catch up, but they have updated their Bend, which is kind of their adventure gravel bike. And they're also coming out with a more sort of straight ahead, just all road kind of bike. So I've got those two in the queue to test next. So that'll be interesting.
And they sell completes, right? They're not like frame onlys.
Yeah, they sell completes. The Bend, just like component spec is usually the surprising part. Like the Bend has it's got SRAM Explorer on it. With the electronic but electronic rear derailleur and the electronic dropper, which I'm just more
Oh,
curious
dang.
than anything to test out.
For
But
what? For how much?
oh shoot, I can't remember exactly. It's somewhere around the 2000 mark.
What?
2000 to
That's
2500.
bananas.
Yeah, definitely under. I want to say under 25 for sure. But
Dang,
yeah,
that's like canyon pricing.
right. It's all direct to consumer, so they save some money there somehow, right?
Yeah. So Dmart says, Husky always kind of confused me. Didn't see where I could fit it on my stable. It is an interesting bike because it's mountain bike-ish, but not a mountain bike. I like it for just, like a mess around bike. I wouldn't, I don't know, get serious, mountain bike trails with it. I mean, you could but it's just a fun, playful, goofy bike.
Yeah. You might call it a hybrid. I don't know.
Yeah. It's an ATV.
Yeah, that's what it
Dang
is.
it.
It's an ATV.
Yeah. Let's see. Conrove can be had for 750, 850. Yeah. That wouldn't be a bad beater bike for that kind of money.
Yeah. Someone said they're gonna upgrade to Sword. I'm curious if it's available to the public yet. I don't actually know. Do you know?
I've been out of the loop for like a month and a half, man. People still ride bikes. What? It's still a thing.
Right.
I have been seeing like so many doom and gloom videos about the state of the bike industry. I don't know if that goes through your feed.
Totally. Yeah.
But it is quite the predicament. It seems as if, like, one of the angles I heard was during COVID, the big boom in cycling, and also drew in lots of investors, so that helped lots of companies explode. And now, as things kind of contract and bad ordering decisions, a lot of the investors are pulling out and pulling the rug out of big companies.
Yeah.
So
right. Antonio said Sword is available. Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have to do a conversion here on the state, something like that.
Yeah. I think for a while I'm actually gonna have to be buying stuff that I have to review, just like the good old days.
Well, that's kind of
it's so hard to. What kind of YouTuber does that?
All the baller YouTubers do that.
That's true, right? It's just there's gonna be fewer reviews, but because we're gonna be buying the things, so there you go.
Fewer, more honest, really harsh reviews.
Right? This is crap. One of the biggest. I think it might technically be the biggest bike store in Spain is a company called Bikein. Bikeinn, and it's like they've got other branches like Trade In and all this stuff. They've got a warehouse a couple train stops away, and I think I might do a video on shopping at Spain's biggest bike store, because it's supposed to be a weird process. Like, you go in and you order things at a kiosk, and then someone runs out in the back to the warehouse and pulls it out. So you don't get to browse, but you supposedly have all those things. So we'll see.
Bikein is one of those websites. Like, when I'm shopping for something, it comes up all the time. It pops up. Yeah, and I never know, like, is this for real? Like, is this a real thing? But apparently it is.
Yeah, I went through. It's funny. I went through their entire component catalog the other day just to see, what they have. What kind of friction shifters they have. Not so much a thing here in Spain, apparently. But they did have like some random Paul parts, which was bizarre.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be an interesting one.
What about budget e-bikes? I don't know. I probably wouldn't go budget on the e-bike, to be honest, unless you have good fire insurance in your house.
To bring up Polygon, like Eric's Spindat has been doing a lot with their Polygon E trail bike, like the T7E, and that's full. That's not generic. That's full Shimano EP8 or whatever. So I would say budget e-bikes, like, prioritize the electronics first. Like, if it's a off-brand that you've never heard of, that's not UL listed, maybe wait for some reviews to come out first.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think the prices in general are starting to come down on e stuff. So.
Yeah. Do you watch the Propel YouTube channel? He does like mostly e-bikes and stuff. He was talking about some legislation that, like, some buildings are just like, no, you can't have an e-bike in this building in New York, because they've had some problems with fires. Really? So some customers bought a bike, thought they could bring it in their house, and were like, nope. Like on the trains here in Spain, there's actually some signage that I don't know if they were here last year, but you can't bring things on like an electric scooter or a one wheel. It doesn't call out e-bikes specifically, but there is like some thought into electronics catching on fire in public spaces.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't know how frequently it happens, but when it does, it seems spontaneous and very dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
Those, I don't know if they're LiPo batteries, but whatever type of batteries, they just burn super hot and super fast. So,
yeah. Let's see other. Fan of Surly Preamble. That's a good one. Yeah. Someone here got a Sword 1X mech recently, and the fit and finish is very basic. Looks cheap, and the spring felt very weak.
Those are all the things I like about it. Light lever action, so that you don't have to your forearms aren't burning, and the finish is basic. Like Sword's a group set that's based on GRX, Shimano GRX, and GRX has this like rubberized coating on the levers, and all my GRX levers is peeled off and like worn away, whereas the Sword is just kind of this like textured, like almost powder coated finish, which I think will last a lot longer.
Yeah. The spring, it's not, does it have, technically it has a clutch derailleur, right? Sword.
Yeah, it does. You twist a little knob or something.
I don't know. From my recollection, it's been a while since I've handled it. It did, it wasn't like Shimano XT quality, but like I feel like it was a step up from like a Sensa.
Yeah.
Relative to the off brands, it was pretty good. So
yeah, I agree. I'm wondering how you got it. Some people say it's available in December. Other people say it's available now. Maybe it depends on where you are.
I know that there's one at the bike co-op in Missoula. Don't ask me how I know.
Oh, you didn't bring over your Sword group set?
No, I gave away so much stuff. All the people at the bike co-op were so stoked. I was handing them stuff. I was like, you guys, the stuff has not come out yet. So don't just put on some random bike. Yeah.
Nice.
I love this. Bike CAD. So definitely want to give Bike CAD a go and take a crack at designing my own bike. And who knows? There's supposed to be some local builders. There's one guy not too far away in Barcelona. We met Rizzo Bikes from Madrid. So who knows? Maybe can cook up a bike and see if we can have someone make it in Spain.
That'd be cool. We could do a challenge video. We'll each design our own bike and see how terrible it comes out.
We should design each other a bike.
Yeah. We'll title it How Hard Can It Be? Like, how hard can it be?
Right.
Yeah, that would be a great
We only have that Seth bike hack money,
Right.
That's a new standard now. Now that GCN Plus is getting shut down, everything it's a Seth bike hack money.
So he moved to the top. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So Ashley said Amazon has Sword for sale. So there you go.
Oh, no way. Oh, Brian said that earlier too. I didn't know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
We'll order some before they sell out.
I'll order you some and you can fly here to Spain and bring it over because
yeah, that'll be cheaper that way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Sean says it's just a bunch of tubes joined together. What could go wrong?
Exactly. Simple, right? It's just a simple frame. Nothing to it.
I am gonna, now that I've got the light set up and everything, I'm gonna start doing some podcasts again. And one of the guests coming up is gonna be Jeff Rain from Wild. We're gonna bring him back on, and the theme is like how to start a bike brand because he's done it twice, right? Once with All City and again with Wild. So I'm curious, like, okay, how much money do you actually need? And like, what are like the first steps? Which I think would be interesting insight.
Yeah. Ask how much it would be to do a one-off a one-off challenge.
Right. Because he posted a picture recently on the gram, and he had the folks at Maxway come out and visit, or they came out and visited Minneapolis. I think Maxway is the factory that builds like most of the bikes that we like to ride. So Surly, All City. I think they probably do Crust and Tumbleweed, and I don't know if Richie uses them, but yeah, well respected factory.
Cool. So. Yeah, didn't know that. It's behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. Cool. So hopefully that you guys got some value out of that. Budget bikes, every budget is different. To make that budget price, some compromises are made, usually in the components. But still, it doesn't mean they necessarily have to be bad bikes, and there are some good budget bikes out there.
Right.
Anything else you want to add about budget bikes, Nolan?
No. I've got the video for the state coming out on Sunday, but pretty much it'll restate everything we just talked about. So
yeah,
no need to watch it now.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, someone said there can be some good prices on the whole city since this is their last year, or some bad prices. I don't know if there are any all city collectors, but they did come out with some sweet bikes.
Scramble to just buy them up.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to take us home here. Thanks again for joining us this morning if you're in the US, or this evening if you're here in Europe. We'll probably come back together in like 2 weeks or so. We might be in different digs if we find an apartment.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again for watching, everyone. And as always, keep the supple side down and stream.